Hi, I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. Today we're going to look at the Victory 3D HV arrows. Now these are a 3D specific arrow and I want to talk a little bit about that. So the first thing is when people come to my shop, they generally say, I need an arrow for this purpose. So a person came into my shop the other day and said, I need an arrow for 3D archery, which I can use for target and also use for hunting. So I suppose what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss about the different types of arrows you use for target versus hunting versus 3D. Now 3D HV is specifically built for 3D archery. So it's a lighter arrow. It's a 204 thickness. So arrows generally come in the 166, which is the thin carbon, the 204, which is your middle-sized carbon, and your 246, which is your fatter carbon. Now there's also indoor size arrows, which people also use, and we're going to discuss those a little bit later, but they're the three sizes. So the 3D HV is your 204 thickness arrow, but what makes this a 3D arrow is the weight. It's very, very light. So when you compare arrows on the market, the 3D HVs, these are 400 spined arrows. So that's for about a 60-pound bow. I shoot 60 pounds at 28.5 inches. The 3D HV is 5.9 grains and they cost about 170 Australian dollars. The VAP, which is the arrow I shoot for target, which is your thinner carbon arrow, weighs 7.1 grains, so a little bit heavier. Now, less affected by wind, the VAP, because it's thinner than the 3D HV. So let's say there's no wind on the day, so there's no wind, it's a nice calm day. It makes no difference if the arrow is fatter versus thinner. It's only if there's wind around. Now on that, the story is that if you got lots of wind, you're better with a heavier point weight. Now the first 1400 score shot in the world was from an Australian, I'm pretty sure, Clint Freeman, shot a 1400 feet score with an 80 grain point. These days people are going up to 140, 150 grain points to create more stability in the wind. So the point weight, the reason I'm going to go on this is we're going to talk about the 3D HVs. Other arrows which people commonly used for 3D is the Black Eagle PS23. Now that's a thick arrow, that's like an indoor arrow, so it's thicker than the 246, that's 7.3 grains. Eastern carbon ones are 8.4. Your hyper speed, which is your Eastern fast 3D arrow, which is a 246, is 7.1. The gold tip velocity is 7.4, and that's a 246 as well. So it puts the Victory 3D HV as a significantly lighter arrow than the rest of the field, and a 204 versus a 246 or a 166. So the advantage of a 204, obviously less wind drift, but you're not going to break the lines as much as a 246. So with a thicker arrow, the walls tend to be thinner. Now with this shaft, because it's so light, I expect very thin walls. So we're going to look at this shaft and what it comes with. Now it comes in two grades. This is the sports model, also comes in the elite. So it comes with pin bushings. And I was expecting knocks that push into those, and there they are there. Now they're black. Now these are a boning F knock. The Eastern G-Knocks will work as well. Eastern G-Knocks come in two sizes, small and large. This is just the large groove, so generally for compound shooters, and these arrows are generally used by compound shooters. We did have the state barebow champion shooting them. Charles was shooting these arrows for barebow, and the reason why you'd shoot these for unmarked rounds and where you've got to judge distance is because they're faster. So when you judge the distance incorrectly, so let's say it's a 41 meter shot and you guess it to be 40 meters, you're more likely to hit the target if it's a good shot, if the arrow is faster than if it's slower. So that's why people are generally shooting lighter arrows. Now people will also shoot thicker arrows because they're more likely to break the line. So this is a 3D HV. Now with the, you can see there it's got the 204 written on the side. Now all Victory arrows are spine aligned. And what that means is they go through and they test the spine of the arrow in all the different directions. and then they put a little spine on the side there, which means when you fletch these arrows, you want your fletch to be lined up with that, so that all your arrows are consistent. So this arrow is extremely light. The wall thickness is there. I'm hoping that zooms in. You can see the wall thickness is very thin. So my VAP arrows, they've got a very thick wall. So when my arrows come and smack up against each other, because I shoot lots with them and I'm always hammering my arrows, I get very little damage. So I don't think I've had any damage on my VAP arrows because the wall thickness is so thick. Now if I was to group these arrows in target, so let's say I was to shoot 6 arrows in the same target, I'm more likely to break these than a VAP. So I'd be less inclined to shoot the 3D HVs for target because I'd get more damage than with a VAP. Price point being about the same. So I'm going to use, forgive me, it's cold. I'm more likely to shoot these for 3D where I've only got the 1 arrow to shoot. Okay. Shooting these bare bow is good because obviously they're going to be lighter, so less judging again. But if you're getting, point blank accuracy where you're lobbing the arrow at the same dot, I would want a more solid arrow than these, so more durable. Now if you're shooting marked, so you know the difference, the distance, the speed of the arrow is not going to be a big factor because you know it, you can set your sights to that distance. This is for unmarked distances. This is where this sort of comes in. So these are the points for 3D HVs. Now I find this really confusing. So this is a break-off point. There's 2 models of this point. So this is the RIP 259, and the reason they have 2 different points is because to make these shafts, as they make the shafts thicker, increase the spine, they're increasing the outer diameter of the shaft. So they actually have 2 sizes of these, and you'll see on the back here it says for the 3D HV, the RIP XV, or the RIP. So it's really confusing about which one of these points to buy, and I wish there was more information here on the back or somewhere on the packet to say, well, it's for this spined arrow. I mean, you can obviously look up the Victory charts, but let's say you're working in a shop, it's like, well, I've got to go and find a Victory chart when I've got to grab some points. It's and when you've got a shop full of people, that's hard. So this is what the point looks like here. So this is a target point. Now with the extreme velocity arrow, which is the same weight as the 3D HV, it comes with insert and not a target point. Now these target points are 150 grains, full length, and each one of these is 20 grains. So, well, this back one here is longer. You can see it's longer. So I think this back one's 30, and then this is 20, and this is 20. So 70. You chop all 3 bits of those off, and how do you break those off? Just with a bit of plier, and you go crack. Then you get down to an 80 grain point. So common question I get is, what size point should I use? Now I'm going to go back to where I started this video and saying, well, the first 1400 feeder score was shot by a guy down in Tasmania shooting an 80 grain point. These days people are shooting heavier points because they want more stability in windy conditions. Now 3D archery is generally at shorter distances, so 30 meters is probably the average shot. You might have one shot at 48 meters, and you generally won't get a lot of wind. So for me, choosing the point weight for 3D archery, I'm inclined to go for an 80 grain point to increase my speed. And when we make these arrows, I'm going to go for an 80 grain point. Now with the pin system, these have got a uni bushing, as you saw at the start. I like the pin systems because pin systems means I can put the same knock on all my arrows, whether it's a 3D arrow or a target arrow. I can use the same knock, so everything's compatible. Now what's really good about pin system is when you Robin Hood your arrow down the back end, it saves the arrow. Now with the uni bushing system, when you Robin Hood the arrow, you still have a chance of breaking the arrow, but it's a very solid system. Now for me, shooting 3D archery, it's 1 arrow or 2 arrows. You're not going to get a lot of back end damage, so it's not going to really worry. So I'm just figuring I'm going to save the $20 $20 for the pins, $20 for the nocks. I'm going to say $40 by just using the nocks and the uni bushings that come with the shafts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap these and throw it in. So and then what we're going to do is we're going to put it through a chronograph to see. So difference between 100 and 80 grain, I'm going to say not a lot. Back in the old days, and obviously I'm an old archer now, all the target archers used to shoot very lightweight points, so like 70 grains to 80 grains. Bow hunters used to shoot 120, and target archers would go, well, they're shooting these heavy points, that's because they're hunting, they will need more penetration. And now what's happening is the target archers are shooting heavier points for more stability, and the bow hunters are shooting 100 grain. So it's like it's kind of gone in reverse these days. So I'm going to fit the standard uni bushings. I'm going to put those in with hot metal on the back end, so that way if I do damage to the bushing I can get it out. I'm going to put these in with hot metal as well. Now you can use a normal glue when you stick them in, and we're going to chronograph it. Hopefully I've answered most of those questions. Now on vanes, I find most vanes are very similar. For 3D archery I'm going to look for low profile because I don't need high profile for correcting a broadhead. I just need low profiles vanes. Any of the vanes are going to be fine. Keep them low profile because you want to minimize wind drift if it's a windy day. So with that, I think I've answered most of the questions I generally get. Probably forgotten some, but that's okay. With that, I'll go and make these arrows up, and we'll compare the speed of these to the VAPs. Now for 3D archery in America, in the US, you've got a speed restriction of 300 feet per second, and I don't know which category that is, but that's why you see most of the 3D shooters in America shooting target bows. So they're shooting target bows and arrows which will shoot 300 feet per second because it keeps everyone on a level playing field. Now in the other form of 3D archery, whatever that is, I think it's IBO, there's no speed restriction. So people could be shooting faster bows, lighter arrows, and so just bear that in mind. Now in Australia there's no speed restriction on your 3D setup, so you can shoot these light arrows, you can shoot a 70-pound bow, you can shoot a 5-inch brace height and really pump your speeds up to the 360 feet per second. But in America you're limited for whatever competition that is. I think it's the ASA, you're limited to 300 feet per second. So it's the reason why you'd very rare to see a hunting bow in the ASA being shot. Most of them are target bows, and most of them will be arrows which enable you to shoot 300 feet per second. So you see very few thin arrows, you'd see very few people shooting heavy point weights. You basically see a target bow which shoots 300 feet per second. So it keeps a level playing field. If you've got an unlevel playing field where speed is critical, you'll see the bigger draw lengths come in, and that's where those people dominate, because a person with longer draw length generally has more speed and more power than a shorter person with less speed and less power. So, and I'm going to say it always rates back to the quality of the archer. So it's no use being a 33-inch draw length and you're shooting against a guy who's 27 inches, and the guy who shoots 27 shoots great, and the guy who shoots 33 doesn't shoot so great, because the guy who shoots 27 inches who shoots really well is going to outshoot that person every time. But I'm just talking, if you've got two equivalent archers who shoot the same score for target archery, and they go and shoot 3D archery, and they both guess the distance wrong by the same amount, the person who's got a longer draw length is going to be more accurate, because the arrow will come out faster than the person with the shorter draw length. So that's why the point weight and the arrow weight, and that's why these 3D HVs come into it. Now, how accurate is a 3D HV arrow versus a VAP arrow? And that's what I wanted to cover in this video. Well, when I say this video, the next one I'm going to do about setting up these arrows and seeing what sort of score I shoot with them. But I actually have a person who has a set of these arrows, who's a good shot. Local archery comes in my shop every day. And he shot these arrows on the weekend and shot a 50-meter world round with them. So it's 50 meters on a small target face. Like a world-class score is 700 points out of 720. He shot 686 out of 720, and that was with 3D HVs, and he was shooting a 100 grain point. Once again, the point weight's not going to be critical for target archery. It's going to be more critical for 3D archery. But 686 is a very, very good score. Now, he would be more affected if it was a windy day, and he would shoot better with his thin carbon arrows in a windy day. But the day was a nice day, and a 686 was a very impressive score. So with that, we'll go inside and make up these arrows and see how well I shoot with them. Thanks for watching. Bye.